I'm not the kind of person who keeps score, or at least I wasn't. I believed in helping out without expecting anything in return, especially when it came to family. You love, you give, and you hope it all comes back around in its own way. But some people don't see love like that. Some people see generosity as weakness. Some people see your silence as permission. My name's Julian. I'm 33. I've got a 4-year-old son named Oliver, who's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He's got this habit of tapping my shoulder twice before he says something important, like he's giving me a heads up. I don't know where he picked it up, but it gets me every time. His mom and I split a couple of years ago. Amicably, thankfully. She lives a few towns over, and we share custody. Nothing messy. I've worked hard to keep life stable for him, even when mine hasn't always been. My parents live 10 minutes from me. Retired, healthy, plenty of time on their hands. For a while, I thought they were the kind of parents everyone would be lucky to have. Back when I was making decent money in tech, before the layoffs hit, I helped them pay off the remainder of their mortgage, a hefty chunk, too, and bought them a new car for their anniversary. They didn't ask for it. I just did it. My way of saying thanks for raising me, you know? I didn't make a big deal out of it. Just handed them the keys in the driveway one spring afternoon. My dad teared up. My mom hugged me and said, "You're such a good son." I believed her. I have one sibling, my older sister, Karina, 41. Lives 2 hours away, but always manages to stay just far enough removed that she's never available for holidays, birthdays, or emergencies. She works in marketing, travels a lot for conferences, and when she does show up to family gatherings once or twice a year, she's always dressed like she's on her way to a red carpet. She's got this performative warmth, big hugs, flashy smiles, selfie-ready enthusiasm, but there's never any follow-through. My parents used to make excuses for her. She's just busy, or she'll call later. Later never comes. Karina didn't even send a text on Dad's birthday this year. Not one. No call, no card, not even a Facebook post. Mom pretended she didn't notice, but I saw the way she kept checking her phone all evening during dinner. I offered to set up a Zoom call. Mom just waved it off and said, "She probably has meetings." Dad tried to cover the silence by launching into a story about his high school track team. I played along, but something about it just stuck with me. This imbalance. This quiet letdown they refused to name. Now, let me be clear. I'm not trying to be the golden child. I don't parade around doing things to make my sister look bad. I've just always believed that if you can help, you do. Simple. But it was becoming harder and harder to ignore how one-sided it all was. Every family dinner, I brought dessert. Every holiday, I helped decorate. Every house problem, I was the one my dad called. The one time the water heater busted, I drove over with my tools and a YouTube tutorial, while Karina posted "family is everything" quotes on Instagram from her hotel suite in Miami. But I still chalked it up to differences in personality. Maybe Karina just wasn't a show-up type of person. Maybe my parents had accepted that, and I was the only one stuck hoping she'd evolve. I figured, as long as they knew they could rely on me, that was enough. Then came last Thursday. I had a job interview, my first real lead in weeks. The kind of opportunity that makes you rehearse your answers in the shower and iron your shirt twice. Problem was, it landed on a day I was supposed to have Oliver. It was short notice, and I didn't want to leave him with just anyone. So I called my mom. Easy favor, I thought. Just an hour or two. I even offered to drop him off with snacks, toys, and everything he'd need. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom. Quick thing. Would you and Dad be able to watch Ollie for a bit tomorrow morning? I've got a job interview. It shouldn't take long, and..." She didn't even let me finish. "Julian," she said, already sounding put out. "We're not your nannies." I blinked. "I didn't say you were. It's just an hour or two. It's an important interview, and I thought you had joint custody." "I do, but I can't bring him to the interview, Mom." "Well," she said, with that huff she uses when she's half done with a conversation, "maybe you should reschedule." There was a silence. That tight, hot kind of silence where you can't believe someone said what they just said. My heart beat faster, not out of anger, at first. Just disbelief. I wasn't asking for a vacation. I wasn't asking them to raise him. I was asking for one small favor after years of showing up. And I realized in that moment, standing there in my hallway with Oliver pushing toy cars across the floor, that I wasn't shocked she said no. I was shocked at how little it seemed to matter to her that she did. I didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't guilt trip. I just said, "All right," and hung up. I walked back to the living room and sat on the floor next to Oliver. He looked up at me, handed me a blue car, and said, "This one's fast like your car." I smiled, but it didn't reach. I ended up asking my neighbor, who thankfully offered to help. She has kids of her own and knew how much that interview meant to me. It went fine. Not amazing, but decent enough to keep me hopeful. For days passed. No call from Mom. No follow-up. No, how'd it go? Nothing. Then, Sunday evening, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, both my parents were standing there. My mom looked anxious, holding a Tupperware container like it was some kind of peace offering. My dad was quiet, hands in his pockets, eyes on the ground. I didn't say anything, just waited. Mom cleared her throat. "Can we talk?" And that's where things start to unravel in a way I never expected. They stood on my porch like strangers who'd wandered onto the wrong doorstep. My mom held that Tupperware like it was a white flag, but her eyes darted past me, scanning my living room like she expected backup. My dad looked tired, not physically, but in the way someone looks when they're caught in the middle of something they can't quite admit to. I should have asked what they wanted. I should have made them say it first. But old habits die hard. I stepped aside and let them in. Oliver was napping in his room. I kept my voice low. "What's this about?" Mom sat down on the couch and placed the Tupperware on the coffee table without a word. It was her lasagna. She always made it after an argument. The kind with extra mozzarella on top, as if melted cheese could smooth over everything unsaid. Dad hovered awkwardly near the window. "I shouldn't have snapped at you," she said eventually, eyes locked on the floor. "I just felt ambushed." I raised an eyebrow. "Ambushed?" "I asked for 2 hours of your time so I could go to a job interview." Her lips pursed. "It's just, we're not young anymore, Julian. Watching a toddler is a lot. You know your father has back problems." Dad winced slightly, but didn't correct her. He's the kind of guy who'll carry furniture with a slip disc if it means avoiding a confrontation. "I wasn't asking you to run laps with him," I said. "Just sit with him. Read a book. Keep him safe." Mom sighed. "We're trying to enjoy retirement, honey. You make us sound like we're useless if we say no once." I sat down across from her. Once. Her eyes flashed. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. The silence between us stretched, full of old weight and new tension. And then, the kicker. "We've been talking," she said, shifting in her seat. "About boundaries." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Boundaries?" Dad finally spoke. "Your sister says you've been putting too much pressure on us." There it was. Karina. Always 2 steps removed, but somehow pulling strings from her cushioned perch. I shouldn't have been surprised. She and Mom had gotten closer over the past year. Not in a natural way, but more like people aligning their stories before a big meeting. Karina had started calling once a week again, usually to vent about work or humble brag about her newest project. Mom ate it up. "She's turning a corner," she'd said one night, beaming after a call. I just nodded. I'd heard it before. "She said that?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "She's worried," Mom said. "She thinks you've gotten dependent." That one hit harder than I expected. I lost my job. I'm raising a 4-year-old. Asking my retired parents for 2 hours so I can attend an interview isn't dependency. It's survival. Mom crossed her arms. "We don't want to be taken for granted." I laughed, but it came out dry. "Taken for granted?" "I paid off your mortgage. Bought your car. Fixed your gutters last winter when Dad slipped on the ladder. Karina didn't even show up for Thanksgiving." Dad flinched, but Mom's face hardened. "She has a demanding career. And I had one. Until I didn't." Funny how quickly that stopped matching. There was another silence, this one thicker, heavier. My mom looked away, and my dad suddenly found a speck of dust on his shoe to focus on. "I think you should go," I said quietly. She blinked. "Julian, I think you should go before you say something that makes it worse." They didn't fight me, just stood up slowly. Mom left the lasagna. Dad gave me a quick, almost guilty nod before they walked out. The door closed behind them with a quiet thud, but it echoed in my chest for hours. That night, I lay awake thinking about all the little signs I'd ignored over the years. The Christmas when Karina forgot to bring gifts, but everyone still cooed over her new designer boots. The time she skipped Dad's surgery because she was slammed with meetings, and Mom covered for her, saying it was probably better without the extra stress. The family trip I paid for where she showed up late, demanded the master bedroom, and then left early after a single group photo. I kept brushing it all off, telling myself that family was messy, that some people love differently. But love shouldn't feel like leverage. A few days passed. No calls. No texts. I figured that was it. Maybe they'd circle back eventually. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, I told myself I was done being the one to chase resolution. Then came the text. From Karina. Can you give Mom a break? She's overwhelmed. You shouldn't have put her on the spot like that. I stared at it for a full minute before responding. She's overwhelmed? I asked for 2 hours of help, not a kidney. She replied almost instantly. You've been pushing too hard lately. They're not your safety net. You made your own choices, Julian. That last line hit a nerve. Because yeah, I did make my own choices. I chose to stay in town when Karina moved away. I chose to raise my son here, near family, hoping it'd mean he'd grow up with grandparents who loved him. I chose to help whenever they needed it, because that's what family does. I just didn't expect the scoreboard to be erased the minute I needed something back. I didn't reply. A week passed. I focused on Oliver, on applying for more jobs, on figuring things out without leaning on anyone. And honestly, it felt good. Quiet, but good. Until one night, I got a call from a family friend, Mr. Lin, who lived 2 doors down from my parents. Hey, Julian, he said, a little awkwardly. Everything okay with your folks? I paused. As far as I know. What? He hesitated. I saw your sister there the other day. She was hauling some stuff out of the garage with your mom. Looked like they were moving boxes. I thought maybe. Well, your mom said something about cleaning house. My stomach turned. I drove over that night. I didn't announce myself. I just parked a few houses down and walked up the driveway. The garage door was slightly ajar, and the motion light flicked on as I approached. What I saw stopped me cold. My childhood boxes, photos, school trophies, old sketchbooks I thought Mom had saved, were stacked neatly near the trash bins. A few of them already soaked from the sprinklers. A folded-up cardboard sign sat on top. Free. Take what you want. I knelt down and opened one of the boxes. Inside were framed pictures of me holding Oliver in the hospital. A handprint painting he'd made for them last Christmas. My college diploma. All of it. Just tossed out. Like clutter. I stood there for a long time, the sound of distant crickets filling the silence. Eventually, the porch light flicked on. My mom stepped out, saw me, and froze. Julian, she said. Not angry. Not surprised. Just caught. I picked up the diploma. Held it up. Really? She didn't move. We needed space. For what? Karina's new staging area? Her jaw tightened. She's thinking of moving back. Temporarily. I nodded slowly, the pieces clicking together. The boundaries. The sudden distance. The pushback about Oliver. It wasn't about being overwhelmed. It was about making room. For her. You could have asked me to move this, I said, gesturing at the boxes. Or told me to come get it. But you didn't. You just dumped it. I didn't think you'd care, she said. And that was somehow worse. I took a breath, the air thick with betrayal. You've made your choice, I said, quieter than I expected. I hear you loud and clear. And without another word, I picked up 2 boxes, walked back to my car, and left the rest sitting there under the flickering porch light. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I filed paperwork to change something I never thought I'd touch. I wish I could say that filing that paperwork felt empowering. That I walked out of the building with a smirk and a spring in my step, like a man finally taking charge of his life. But the truth is, I sat in my car afterward, gripping the steering wheel with both hands and staring blankly out the windshield. My chest was tight, my hands clammy. The air felt heavy with something I couldn't name. Grief, maybe. Grief for the version of family I thought I had. The paperwork wasn't some bold revenge. I wasn't striking back. Not yet. It was quiet, administrative, unremarkable on the surface. But to me, it was the start of a line being drawn. I removed my parents as emergency contacts. Took them off Oliver's daycare pickup list. I changed the address for my medical records. Nothing dramatic, just separation. A signal to myself that I was done clinging to an idea that didn't exist. That weekend, I did a full sweep of my apartment. Cleaned out drawers, donated old clothes, reorganized Oliver's room. I stayed busy on purpose. My brain had too many sharp corners those days, and motion softened them. Oliver, thankfully, was blissfully unaware. He'd climb into my lap with picture books or chase his toy dinosaurs across the hallway like nothing had changed. And in a way, I was grateful. At least one of us still believed in unconditional love. I didn't hear from my parents for 2 weeks. Not a call, not a text. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Occasionally, I'd think about the lasagna still sitting in the back of the fridge. I couldn't bring myself to eat it, but I didn't throw it out either. It felt like a relic, a symbol of something that used to mean comfort and now just made me feel sick. Then one morning, I woke up to an email. Subject: let's talk. It was from Karina. Short, polite, vague. Mom and Dad are struggling. They don't know how to reach out to you. I think you're being a bit extreme, but I'm willing to mediate if you're open to a conversation. I stared at it for a long time. Struggling? They weren't sick. They weren't broke. They weren't alone. They had each other. And apparently, they had her. The only thing they were struggling with was me having boundaries. I didn't reply. Instead, I doubled down on the things I could control. I poured my focus into Oliver. I took him to the science museum. We built a solar system out of Play-Doh. I taught him how to ride his bike on the grass in the park just behind our building. We fell. We laughed. We got back up. Again and again. And then, out of nowhere, something shifted. I got a call back for that job interview. The company had been dragging their feet on hiring, but they finally made a decision, and they wanted me. It wasn't as senior as my old role, and the pay wasn't as high, but the hours were flexible, the team seemed solid, and most importantly, they respected the fact that I was a single dad. The hiring manager actually smiled when I mentioned Oliver during our second call. I started 2 weeks later. It was rocky at first, shaking the rust off. But soon I found a rhythm. I dropped Oliver off at daycare, did my work from the small home office I carved out in the corner of the living room, and picked him up with a juice box and a story queued up for the ride home. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And after the emotional storm I'd weathered, stability felt like luxury. What surprised me most during this time was how light I felt. Not all the time. There were still pangs of sadness, moments when I'd see a family at the park with doting grandparents and feel that sharp ache in my chest. But there was also relief. A release of that constant pressure to perform, to please, to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. Without that weight on my shoulders, I could finally breathe. One afternoon, I ran into Mr. Lin again while walking Oliver. "You look good, Julian," he said, giving me a warm smile. "Less stressed." "Trying," I said with a shrug. He hesitated. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I always thought your parents leaned on you a bit too much. You were always the one fixing things. Nice to see you taking care of yourself for a change." I didn't know what to say. It was the first time someone outside the family acknowledged it. That silent imbalance I'd been carrying for years wasn't just in my head. "Thanks," I said. "Means more than you know." A few days later, I got a surprise call from an old friend, Danny. We used to work together in my last job before the layoffs. He'd gone on to start his own small agency and wanted to know if I'd be interested in consulting part-time. "You've always been good with client management," he said. "Flexible hours. Decent pay. No pressure. Just think about it." I thought about it, then said yes. Suddenly, I was juggling 2 jobs, but for once, it didn't feel like drowning. It felt like choice. Like momentum. I started saving again. Not much, but enough. I opened a new account under Oliver's name, began setting a little aside each week. Not for anything grand, just a safety net. Something to show him, one day, that even when things got messy, his dad had a plan. I also began writing again. Nothing serious. Just small journal entries, late at night after Oliver was asleep. I wrote about the things I was learning, about people, about love, about letting go. It helped. Made me feel like I was shaping my own story again. Still, I'd be lying if I said the family stuff disappeared. It lingered, like background noise. Occasionally, I'd get updates from distant cousins or mutual friends. Karina had apparently been driving down more often, helping declutter the house. Mom had joined some community garden group. Dad was playing chess at the local rec center. They were fine. Thriving, even. But not once did they reach out. Until one night, around 11 p.m., I got a call. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message popped up. I played it, heart thudding. It was my dad. "Hey, Julian. I know it's late. Just wanted to say, hope you and the little guy are doing okay. I miss you. That's all." Short. Scratchy. Like he didn't want Mom to hear. I stared at my phone for a while, then deleted the message. Not out of spite. Just clarity. I'd spent too long waiting for crumbs of affection. Apologies whispered in the dark. Promises that never made it to daylight. I wasn't going to teach Oliver that love was something you had to earn by being useful. Instead, I took him to the beach that weekend. It was cloudy, but he didn't care. He ran along the shoreline, chasing seagulls and giggling like the world was brand new. I stood there, toes in the sand, jacket zipped up to my chin, and felt something settle in me. Peace. Not closure. Not yet. But peace. A week after that, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my mom's. The envelope was thin, just one sheet of paper inside. I unfolded it carefully, bracing myself for guilt, for veiled jabs, for passive-aggressive concern. Instead, it said, "Karina's moving in temporarily. We didn't plan for it, but she's between apartments. It's been tense. Your father misses you. So do I. I know I hurt you. I don't expect you to forget that. I just hope one day we can talk. No expectations. No fixing. Just talk. Love, Mom." I read it 3 times, and then folded it back up and placed it in a drawer. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because for the first time in my life, I was choosing when the conversation happened. And this time, it would happen on my terms. What I didn't know then was that something was coming. A shift in their perfect little plan. A mistake they couldn't walk back. And it would all start with a knock on my door, early on a Saturday morning, while Oliver was still eating cereal in his pajamas. It happened on a Saturday morning, just like I said. The knock was loud and uneven, like someone unsure if they wanted to be heard. I was in the kitchen pouring milk into Oliver's cereal when it came, and for a second, I thought it might be my neighbor again. She usually came by to borrow baking ingredients or drop off leftovers. But when I peeked through the peephole, I froze. It was Karina, not dressed in her usual high heels and fitted trench coat, not coiffed and glowing like some influencer posing outside a Manhattan coffee shop. She looked disheveled. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her oversized hoodie was wrinkled and clung to her like she hadn't changed in a day or two. She clutched her phone in one hand and a half-empty iced coffee in the other, tapping her foot like she was both anxious and annoyed. I didn't open the door. I waited. She knocked again, harder this time. "Julian, I know you're in there." No apology. No, "Hey, can we talk?" Just entitlement, like always. Like this was her stage, and she was improvising until the spotlight found her again. I cracked the door, but left the chain on. Oliver peeked around my leg. "Can I help you?" I asked flatly. She exhaled like I'd just told her flight was delayed. "Can I come in?" "No." A beat passed. Her eyes darted to Oliver, then back to me. "I need to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" She hesitated. That alone told me this wasn't a casual visit. Karina never hesitated. She was always sure, always rehearsed. She lowered her voice. "It's Mom. She kicked me out." I blinked. That was the last sentence I ever expected to hear from her. "Kicked you out of where?" "Their house. I've been staying there, remember?" She looked around, like someone might be recording this. Her tone softened, almost like she was trying vulnerability on for size. "I didn't have anywhere else to go. I told you that in the letter." "The letter?" I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door gently behind me so Oliver wouldn't hear. "You didn't write that letter." She flinched. I nodded slowly. "Mom did." She looked away. I crossed my arms. "So why'd she kick you out?" That brought her eyes snapping back to mine. "Because she's unstable." I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. "You've lived there a few months, Karina. I've known her my whole life. Try again." She scowled. She went through my stuff. My emails. Accused me of stealing. Can you believe that? I could. I didn't say it out loud, but I absolutely could. Karina had always treated boundaries like suggestions. When we were younger, she used to rifle through my drawers for cash or gift cards. She'd borrow clothes and never return them. She once signed my name on a library late fee form, so I'd get charged instead of her. It was always little things, but consistent. And she never apologized. She'd just twist the story until it sounded like you were the one overreacting. She said I lied about my lease situation. Karina continued. That I used them. That I made her throw out your stuff to make room. Which is crazy, by the way. That made me pause. You did make her throw out my stuff, I said. She looked surprised. Wait, you care about that? I care that it wasn't your decision to make. She frowned, folding her arms tightly. Why are you acting like I'm the enemy? Because you are. The words came out so clean, so cold. Even I was startled by how true they felt. And the look on her face, that flicker of realization, like something had finally snapped into place. Was confirmation enough? She opened her mouth, closed it. Then, like always, she pivoted. Look, she said, lowering her voice again. They're selling the house. That stopped me. What? I wasn't supposed to tell you yet, she continued, eyes scanning the street. But yeah, it's happening. They already met with a realtor. They want to downsize. I stared at her. And this is what to do with me. She hesitated again, then pulled out her phone and scrolled. They're listing it under both their names. But here's the thing. You know that loan you paid off for them? The mortgage. I nodded slowly. Well, technically, that payoff might have given you partial claim on the equity, depending on how it was filed. I narrowed my eyes. What are you talking about? She held up her phone. Look, I talked to someone. A friend who works in real estate law. I asked hypothetically, what happens if someone pays off a family member's mortgage and it's not a gift and it wasn't properly documented? She said if there's no gift affidavit or waiver, and if that payment can be traced, there might be grounds to claim interest in the property, especially if the person contributed significantly to the value. I stared at her, heart pounding. And you're telling me this why? She finally said it. Because I want you to help me stop them. I took a step back. You want me to fight our parents over a house you were squatting in and got kicked out of? They're selling it for cash, she said quickly. And they're planning to split it 2 ways, between themselves. No inheritance talk. No future planning. Nothing for us. Nothing for you. After everything you did. My throat went dry. You weren't going to tell me this until you got kicked out. She shrugged helplessly. I figured it wasn't my business. But now, I shook my head. This wasn't about justice. This wasn't about fairness. This was about access. Karina didn't care that I'd been cut out. She cared that she had been. And for the first time, I saw the game clearly. She was scared. Not because she'd been kicked out, or because she'd lost comfort, but because she'd lost control. She thought mom and dad would cater to her forever. She thought her presence was enough of a currency to get what she wanted. But now that the faucet had turned off, she came running to the one person she thought she could still manipulate. Me. But I wasn't the same brother she used to shove around in our teenage years. I wasn't the quiet son sitting at dinner while she was praised for doing the bare minimum. I was done playing backup. So I nodded, pretended to think. Okay, I said slowly. Let me talk to someone. I might know a guy. Her eyes lit up. Seriously? Yeah. Just give me a few days. She smiled, genuinely for once. Or maybe just better performed. Then she turned and walked back to her car, waving as she left. As soon as she drove off, I called an old friend of mine, Greg. He used to be a contracts analyst in real estate finance before pivoting into freelance investigations. The kind of guy who could dig up a tax record faster than most people could Google a birthday. I laid it all out for him. The mortgage payoff, the lack of a gift affidavit, the equity buildup, the potential sale. I'm not looking to sue, I told him. Not yet. I just want to know what's real and what's smoke. Greg agreed. Over the next few days, he sent me files, old bank statements, deed transfers, lien releases, and the most important one, the property title. Turns out, when I paid off the mortgage, the final payment was processed under my name. My signature was on the cashier's check. There was no formal agreement marking it as a gift. No legal disclaimer of rights. It had all been done on faith, trust, and in the eyes of the law, that trust might have created a silent interest. Greg explained it like this. Right now, you technically have a foot in the door. If they sell without disclosing your contribution, they could be opening themselves to a claim. It's not guaranteed, but it's leverage. Strong leverage. That's when the gears started turning. I didn't want to take their house. I didn't want to ruin anyone. But they needed to feel what it was like to be left out of a conversation that changed everything. To be blindsided. To be treated like a footnote in a story they helped write. So I began to plan. I made copies of every document. Organized them in a folder. Started drafting an affidavit of interest, not to file, but to hold. A shadow under their future transaction. A silent warning. Then I began asking questions. To mutual friends. To family acquaintances. Subtle, casual questions about mom and dad's upcoming plans. Their realtor. Their timelines. I learned that Karina had been pushing them to move fast. She'd even introduced them to a buyer, a friend of a friend, supposedly very interested. Cash buyer. No inspection. Just sign and close. And then I found something else. A clause buried in the buyer's preliminary offer letter. If accepted, It would include an as-is condition and a waiver of all prior claims and liens, including any disclosed or undisclosed financial contributions. Greg laughed when he read it. "This isn't a house purchase," he said. "It's a legal eraser." Karina wasn't trying to stop the sale. She was trying to secure it by getting me to sign something, or stay quiet, or file early and then settle quietly out of sight. She thought she could use my pain as a springboard. That's when I knew what I had to do. I called Greg back. "I want to stop them, but not with a lawsuit." He paused. "Then how?" I smiled. "With information. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming in someone's face. It's letting them walk right up to the edge of comfort and pulling the rug out just before they settle in." The game had started, and for once, I wasn't playing defense. 3 weeks later, my parents' house was scheduled to close. The buyer, a man named Mark Feldon, was supposedly an investor, but Greg's digging revealed he was a shell figure tied to a small real estate flipping firm run by one of Karina's old college friends. It was clear what they were doing. Karina had brokered a deal that would slide the house into a friendly buyer's hands, flip it 6 months later, and pocket the back-end profits quietly, likely under the table. I wasn't supposed to know any of this. I was supposed to sit quietly on the sidelines like I always had. Except this time, I didn't. The day before closing, I sent one email. To Donna Keating, the family realtor. CC, Mark Feldon, Karina Mendez, Mary and Robert Wyatt, my parents. Subject: pending sale of 337 North Hollow Lane. Dear all, as an informal courtesy before any further transfer of ownership occurs, I want to disclose that I hold documentation indicating a substantial financial contribution made toward the remaining balance of the mortgage on 337 North Hollow Lane, paid directly and in full under my name. There was no accompanying gift affidavit signed, nor was any formal waiver of financial interest provided. My contribution may therefore constitute a claimable interest in the property under state law. I've attached supporting records for reference. I trust we can address this respectfully and legally prior to finalization. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed. Julian Wyatt. I didn't hear anything that night. Not a single ping. But the next morning, I woke up to 11 missed calls. 3 from Karina, 2 from Mom, 1 from a number I didn't recognize, Mark Feldon, I assumed. The rest were all from Donna Keating, who probably hadn't expected the quiet younger son to suddenly throw a wrench into her carefully choreographed transaction. I made coffee, took Oliver to daycare, did some work, and only after lunch did I return Donna's call. Her voice was sharp and strained. Julian, I received your email. I'm a little surprised you'd go this route. I'm surprised no one thought I'd notice, I replied. She cleared her throat. Let's not make this hostile. Your parents assumed. They assumed I wouldn't care. They were wrong. A pause. Well, the buyer is now requesting an extension before closing. Legal review. Good idea. I don't suppose there's a way we can resolve this without jeopardizing the deal? There was. Of course there was. I didn't want the house. I didn't want their money. Not directly. What I wanted was control. I wanted them to look me in the eye and acknowledge what they'd tried to do, what they'd taken, and what it would now cost them. Later that evening, Karina showed up again. No coffee this time. No fake smile. She stormed out of her car in tight jeans and a designer blazer that looked like it had been slept in, holding her phone like it was a weapon. You had to ruin everything, didn't you? I stood in the doorway, arms folded. You came to me, I reminded her. You tried to play me, and you thought I'd be too bitter or too desperate to see it. She laughed bitterly. You're doing all this out of spite. No, I said calmly. I'm doing this because I finally understand what I'm worth. She scoffed and turned to go. Tell them, I called after her. If they want to move forward, they'll need to meet with me. All of them. In person. She didn't turn around. But they got the message. That weekend, we met in a neutral location, a law office downtown that Greg helped arrange through a friend. A glass conference room. Neutral walls. Free coffee. No home turf advantage. Karina was already there when I arrived, perched stiffly in her chair like a sulking cat. My mother sat beside her, lips tight, eyes watery but defiant. My father looked worn down, older than I remembered. He didn't meet my gaze when I entered. I sat opposite them, alone, but I didn't feel alone. A paralegal brought in the folder I'd prepared and handed it to their lawyer. He skimmed it silently. And then I spoke. I'm not suing you. Not unless you force my hand. But if this sale goes through without acknowledging my contribution, I will file a claim with the county recorder's office. It'll delay the transaction indefinitely. The buyer will walk. The sale falls through. We all lose. Silence. Then I leaned in. But if you're willing to sign a revised agreement, I'll waive any claim. Mom blinked. What kind of agreement? I turned to Karina. First, Karina is removed from any profits. All proceeds are split solely between you two. Karina's face turned red. She helped organize this. Mom protested. She also tried to cut me out. You can't have it both ways. Dad finally spoke. And what about you? What do you get? I smiled. I want nothing now. Nothing in cash. Nothing in property. I don't want a penny from the sale. But I reached into my folder and slid a new document across the table. You will sign this. Their lawyer picked it up. Read it. His eyebrows rose slightly. What is it? Mom asked. It's a posthumous disinheritance waiver, I said. I waive any right to your estate when you pass. No claims, no contests. But in return, you agree to legally remove Karina from your will as well. Everything goes into a fund for Oliver. Education, healthcare, housing. He gets it all. Karina shot out of her chair. You have got to be kidding me. Sit down, Mom said quietly. Karina froze. I turned to her. You wanted the house? You wanted them to yourself? You've got them. No more competition. No more guilt. But no more money, either. She glared at me. You'd do this to your own sister? I'm doing this for my son. Dad looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or shame. And then he nodded. We'll sign it. Karina's jaw dropped. Dad, he didn't respond. The documents were signed by the end of the hour. Karina stormed out. Mom lingered behind, eyes full of something I didn't have a name for. I never thought it would come to this, she whispered. It didn't have to. She nodded, slowly, then left. I walked out of that office lighter than I'd felt in years. It was over. No more backdoor deals. No more manipulation. No more quiet betrayals. Just clean, documented truth. A week later, I received a letter from the escrow company. The sale had gone through. A copy of the Education Fund Trust was enclosed. Fully funded. Untouchable by anyone but Oliver. A few days after that, I stood in Oliver's room, watching him build a tower out of blocks. He looked up at me. Dad, can we go to the beach again? Soon, I said, smiling. Very soon. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to other people's choices. I was building something of my own. Something real. Something lasting. Something no one could take. And I didn't have to burn the house down to win. Just make sure they knew I'd built my own.
Okay. I think we're done. I cooked a lot of lasagna. Ooh. Lasagna pretty easy if you buy the already made pastry, right? I think we're done. I think that's it, guys. Like, literally. Yummy. Okay. I also want to put that's so yummy. I kind of want to put a little bit more vinegar. Tastes good, yeah. I just want to put a little bit more vinegar. I don't like it when a dish just has salty or whatever. Like, I kind of like a dish to have like a mix of different flavors. So the